I'm really glad that I thoroughly enjoyed Saw 5 because Saw 4 was just horrendous, but the first three films were okay, so I feel like things are back on track. This will be a spoiler free discussion for the most part, but I will go in with some spoiler details, I think. But I'll give a spoiler warning when I do that. This is the first Saw film where I've genuinely cared about specific characters and I've genuinely wanted a certain outcome. So I was really emotionally invested in this. What I will say is that it's not very gory, it's not very graphic. Surprisingly, as the Saw films have gone on, they've become less and less graphic, and that's unusual because usually when we have well, that's something else I was going to say. It's a horror franchise, but I don't class this as a horror anymore. The first few films, yes. This one, not so much. It's more of a mystery thriller. It's not scary in the slightest, but it is very fascinating. There is some bloodshed, but honestly, it didn't bother me at all. But thankfully, we have a really fascinating narrative. And there will be spoilers in this discussion for the previous films, but I won't, for now at least, spoil anything in this one. And this one focuses on the fact that at the end of the previous film, we learned who was helping, Jigsaw, helping John. And when I did my review of that, I said I didn't really believe their motivations or understand why they would be helping out. But this film does actually explain things, and quite quickly, I was able to get on board with the narrative and believe characters' motivations, and all of that made a lot of sense. However, somebody is being framed. Strahm is being framed for this, and I really hoped the right person would be caught, or the wrong person wouldn't be punished. But I'm not going to say what happens. But I was genuinely emotionally invested in this, and I needed the right characters to come out on top. But it's so anything was possible, and I had no idea what they were going to do with this. I've learned to expect the unexpected with Saw in terms of the narrative, and I'd say that that was pretty much what we got here. I never knew what was happening one scene to the next. It's not as complicated as the previous film, but it's still quite an intricate narrative. I found with the previous film, the narrative was just all over the place and they tried to do too much, maybe to throw us off the scent of what was really happening. With this one, there's still a lot going on, but it's much easier to follow and everything makes sense. So that's the main narrative, but we also have some new victims playing the game, and there are 5 of them. And I really enjoyed watching. Well, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I found the torture scenes to be quite fascinating and quite intense. Intense as in it was a race against the clock with each time, but again, I didn't really find it to be very gory or very graphic. It was creative. It was fascinating. And I also was curious to know about what connected them because, of course, as always, there's something that connects the victims. And this one I thought was quite a well written part of the narrative. But again, it wasn't that gory, wasn't that graphic. I didn't feel sick at any point. I don't think I had to look away at any point, whereas the previous films have given me those moments. So I was a little bit disappointed by that because that's one of the great things about Saw. But I still found the narrative to be quite fascinating and unpredictable, and I really enjoyed it. So, better than the fourth, maybe better than the second. I'm not entirely sure. I might try and rank them once I've seen them all. But either way, I was nervous going into this because of how much the previous film had let me down. But I'm really pleased about it. I think it's a great narrative, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So, I'll discuss the ending now. So, big spoilers from now. I'm discussing the end of the film. And I don't know why I didn't see this coming. But at the end, Strahm seems like he's winning. Like he's found him, he's going to expose him. And then Hoffman sinks into the floor inside this box. And I think the fact that the box was glass fronted was a great idea because just watching his face as he sunk into the floor, knowing he was going to get away with this, as the walls begin to crush Strahm, I was confused with my own emotions because, on the one hand, I was furious that the bad guy was getting away with it, even though this is so. We should be used to this by now. But at the same time, I thought, yeah, I should have predicted that because I know there are more films and they need to find at least a very believable way of how they're going to continue this legacy. So I assume, and I haven't looked ahead, and I won't be until I'm ready to watch the film, but I assume Hoffman is then going to continue doing stuff, and that's how they continue John's legacy. Whereas had they killed him in this one and Strahm had won, then I guess it would have been very unrealistic. However, there are other ways. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens next, but I'm not surprised by the ending, but I still didn't see it coming. Very well done. I also like how abrupt it was. Usually I don't like abrupt endings in films. I feel like they're rushed. I want to know what the aftermath was, and I'm sure we'll find out with the next film, but actually the abrupt ending worked really, really well. Needless to say, Saw 5 has restored my faith in the Saw films. I'm looking forward to the next one quite a bit.